I am currently on a plane to Munich in Germany, where I am scheduled to interview this man.
I find it very interesting that this sort of information is in the ancient scriptures of the Holy Quran, and I have no way of knowing where they would come from, but I think it is extremely interesting that they are there and that this work is going on to discover the meaning of some of the passages.
Allegedly, he was asked, "What do you think is the origin of the text in the Quran?" To which he's supposed to have replied,
Well, I would think it must be the divine being.
"This is going to be interesting." Right, the first thing I'd like you to do, if you wouldn't mind, would be to tell the people watching what your name is, please.
William W. Hay.
Now, are you the William W. Hay who appeared in the video I'm about to show you now?
I find it very interesting.
Yes, that's me, and that was in Islamabad in 1984, I believe.
1984. Right, let's see. Well, that was the answer to my next question. When and where was this video? So we're saving on time. Right then, can you tell me what were you told was the purpose of this event?
Well, there were two events. I met with Sheikh Zindani in Jeddah in, I believe it was 1983, and that was an invitation that had been extended because we had heard that the Saudis were trying to do things that would make it easier for scientists to pursue their research in the Arab countries without interference from the mullahs. Mm-hmm. And I was approached by the Geological Society of America to see whether I might be willing to participate in this. And I guess I was the first American to be chosen to go to Saudi Arabia. So I was a little concerned about what this was about because I don't know much about religion, and my specialties are in geology and marine geology and paleoceanography and paleoclimate. And but I was visited by two gentlemen, a Mr. Ahmed and a Mr. Mansour, who talked to me about visiting Sheikh Zindani, and I agreed to do it. I had understood that this was a program that was going to help to make it easier for scientists in the Muslim world to do their work. Right.
Okay. Now, can you describe what happened upon your arrival? The first event was Jeddah, did you say?
That's right.
So could you describe what happened when you arrived at Jeddah?
Well, I arrived at Jeddah and was taken to a hotel, the Meridian, and then for about 4 days, each day I would visit Sheikh Zindani, and we would have a discussion about different topics that he was interested in. Very, very pleasant man to talk to, and so on. And he felt that there were certain passages in the Quran that were not readily explained except in terms of modern science. Mm-hmm. So I was curious to learn about those, and we had good conversations. Mm-hmm. Toward the end, we settled on one topic that they wanted me to talk about, which was about internal waves in the ocean. Well, this is a pretty esoteric topic, and I was really curious as to how there could be anything in the Quran about it. But actually, there is knowledge of these that goes back a long, long way. The Vikings knew about them and so on. I was asking whether Muhammad had ever been to sea or had been talking to sailors, and I was assured that he had never even seen the sea and never talked to sailors, and he was illiterate and would not have had any knowledge about these sorts of things. So I said, well, you know, if there were no possibility that he had ever heard any of this or this or this or this, then I made the statement, well, then you could say it was information from a divine being. But that would require a lot of proof. You know, you would have to be sure that none of these other things had happened, and there didn't seem to be evidence that one could exclude them from having happened.
So when you were saying, so I noticed the thing with the interview that's being distributed. You're saying that the information in the text presented to you was quite interesting, and that it's good that they're trying to work out the origins of this text. And then the video cuts immediately to a new scene where you say it must be from the divine being. Now, the accounts that I've got, there's one here, which is a Quran, which has got claims for scientific miracles in, and you're listed in the back. And it says, for that part, and when he was asked about the source of the Quran, he replied, well, I would think it must be the divine being. So are you saying that that is a misrepresentation?
That's a misrepresentation.
Okay.
There's no question about that. At the meeting, now that was, I think those quotes are all, or the video is from the meeting in Islamabad, which was a year later, which was a larger conference. Mm-hmm. At the meeting in Jeddah, we had a final session that was filmed out on a boat, and again the sheikh went through his list of things, and I explained all the things that I thought might not be true. Yeah. That things that Muhammad might have known, and so on and so forth. And he said, but if we exclude all of those, then what is the conclusion? Well, then I said, well, then you conclude it could have come from a divine being. Yeah. What came after that is, of course, recorded, and that is I think I made a statement, but I don't think that's what happened.
So effectively what he'd done was to say, look at this information. You'd presented lots of various ways that he could have known it through purely natural means. And he said, well, what if he'd never did this? What if this isn't true? What if this isn't true? Painted a purely hypothetical situation. Right. And you said, well, under those conditions, it must have been from the divine being. But I don't think so. That's right. And then the middle was cut out. And then, of course, the fake question was presented. And I realized this had gone on for about 4 days, preparing me for this, and to get to the point where one would finally say those words that he wanted to hear. Mm-hmm. So he was a very clever person. Let's see. So that was the follow-up visit to Islamabad. You said to me earlier before we started recording that took place on a boat. This was in Jeddah. Jeddah was the boat. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now the conference in Islamabad, I think the video is from the conference in Islamabad. Mm-hmm. There were a number of people present. It was a meeting with several hundred people present, conducted in the Parliament building of Pakistan. Mm-hmm. And at one point we had a panel discussion. Yeah. And that's what the video is from. And what I emphasized there was that it's interesting that these things might be in a religious text, but I didn't know why they would be there. Mm-hmm. And the biggest problem with them is interpretation, because I think the sheikh was reading into them all sorts of modern interpretations which weren't necessarily original. Mm-hmm. And perhaps I should say that I think the problem in this whole area is that the meanings of the words, while the words themselves are preserved in script, mm-hmm. the meanings of the words may not be the same today as they were in the year 700. Mm-hmm. That happens in all other languages. I don't know why Arabic would be any different, that meanings of words don't change with time. Mm-hmm. So I think that's probably the biggest problem in the whole thing, is that the words don't mean the way the sheikh is interpreting the words, which seems to be his unique way of interpreting the words, is not the same as what the original words meant. Mm-hmm. Of course, there's various exegesis on the Quran from different centuries where these miracles are never told. We're not had these miracles described to us in advance of the scientific discovery, but then when the scientific discovery is made, people look back and say, oh, look what the Quran clearly said all along.
These most of them are things that I would think that if God wanted somebody to make a great revelation, these are not the things I would have expected.
Yeah.
Because they're all readily observed.
What specifically was the one specific miracle claim that Zindani wanted you to look at?
This was about internal waves in the ocean.
Yeah.
And he interpreted it with a very modern interpretation. I think, when I look at the English translation, that what may have been intended was to talk about the glitter, what we call glitter, which is the light that you see on the seafloor that's formed by waves, and then they focus the light in a different way. And what you see on the seafloor looks like something very different from what you see on the surface. Mm-hmm. That would be an alternative interpretation of what the words might mean.
Yeah.
But I would think that anybody who had been to sea, and the Arabs had an enormous 1,000-year history of seamanship, would have had a lot of knowledge about these sorts of things.
You gave an example to me earlier before we started filming about one place where two seas are meeting where people would have fished.
Oh, yes, certainly in the Bosphorus, yep. Yes. And that's where two seas meet, the Black Sea and the Sea of Marmara. The waters flow out from the Black Sea, and below the outflow is an inflow into the Black Sea. Mm-hmm. And this has been known forever, because when fishing boats go there, the fishing boats would normally drift toward the Sea of Marmara with the outflowing water. But when they lower the nets to the bottom, the fishing boats are dragged backwards mm-hmm. in the other direction toward the Black Sea.
Yep.
So I think everybody for a long time has realized that there are two sets of waters there, one yep. flowing out, one flowing in, and going in the opposite direction. Yeah. Any fisherman would have certainly known that.
Yeah. And what kind of, we're talking, if they've been fishing for a very long time, which they clearly had, then, this could easily be available knowledge to someone, couldn't it?
Oh, it would have been common knowledge to those people, and I think it would have gone to others. There's also a possibility, I don't know about the details, but fishermen in the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb mm-hmm. probably experienced the same thing.
Yeah.
There is an inflow at the surface into the Red Sea and an outflow at depth. Mm-hmm. So there would have been the same sort of thing very close to Jeddah.
Yeah.
That would have been noticeable, I think, to any fisherman who used nets to get to the bottom.
Yeah. Okay. Now, in light of your previous questions, I'll ask the next question somewhat in jest. Did you become a Muslim?
No.
Okay. And the final questions are really just to clear up any accusations which I foresee coming my way when I make this video public. First thing I would like to ask you is, are you being paid by anyone at all to do this video?
No.
In fact, you bought my lunch, so thank you very much.
Yes,
he bought my lunch, so I'm not paying him. Have you been intimidated in any way to retract your original statement? Not by me or anyone?
No.
Okay, no Freemasons,
no,
Zionist Jews?
No
one, okay. I'd like to ask you, what do you think was the real purpose of this event?
Well, as I say, we thought it was to mm-hmm. help make it easier for scientists to operate in the Muslim world.
Yeah.
But clearly, I think in retrospect, it is to try to recruit people for for Islam. Mm-hmm. I hate to say it, but under false pretenses.
Yeah.
And that's a really serious problem.
And finally, at some point previously, you mentioned an event with your hosts. I think it was in Islamabad, a meal after the show. Could you tell me about that?
Yes. Well, we had a one of the meals after one of the evenings in the conference, one of the afternoons in the conference. We had an evening meal, and I was seated with a table. These were all the representatives from who were there, except for the Westerners, were religious figures in the Muslim world. And I was seated with one group. They all seemed to know each other. And Pete Palmer, who was with me, he asked the question, why are there no women here? And we were given the interesting answer that, well, women can't be here because women don't belong in this religious group. Women have no souls. And we were both rather stunned by that. Mm-hmm. And then I guess in retrospect now, we realized that was a table of Taliban. So it was a very, very interesting experience. And I know that's not necessarily a very widely held view in the Muslim world, especially by women. Yeah. But that was what we were told.
Right. Lovely. Thank you very much for doing this interview.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
I thank you very much.
Thanks.